What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be looking at Nieky Holzken style defense. I'm going to take you through the strengths of it, the weaknesses, and how to properly execute if this is something you want to bring into your game. Or maybe you've already been trying to utilize it, but it's just not coming off that well. It's not working that well. There are little holes. Well, we're going to go through why Nieky is so successful with this guard. So I'm trying to think back on how many times I've seen Nieky get really hit hard and get knocked down, especially when utilizing this style of guard, and I don't really think I can think of any. It's definitely not the perfect defense. He still gets hit like anybody, but in terms of getting knocked down, in terms of leaving his head or his body exposed to massive shots, you just don't see it. And it makes me believe that this style of guard does have a place. So let's start off and talk first of all about the structure of his hands and his body. First thing that you want to really note is he just basically takes his hands and he places them up to his head. He's not doing anything fancy here. He's not putting the front of the glove to his head, but he's actually taking more of the thumb area, just like this. All right, a little connection there where the thumb and the rest of the glove connect. That basically goes tight to his head. Once he's accomplished that and he's super tight, he sort of shrugs his shoulders up a little bit, which will give him a little bit more protection to the side. But the very important part is what he does with his torso. If I put my hands up like so, my entire body is exposed. So I have to make sure that I kind of concave my body and draw this elbow down to the hip. I can almost let my forearms, or sorry, not my forearms, my triceps rest against my body to provide more protection. Once I've got to this position, it's very hard to find a big opening where you can land a fast, clean shot. And if you need to, and you see something like a straight shot coming down the middle, because he's fairly covered for the hooks, if he sees the straight shot coming, he just closes up a little bit, and he just sort of turtle shells into a tighter guard to make sure the straight punches cannot come down the middle. Now, something that does often happen when people take this style of guard is they take some shots and they get knocked backwards a little bit. So you have to be extra sure when you fall to the stance that your back foot is really digging into the ground so you don't get knocked backwards. You're much better off throwing your counter shot out of here. You know, bang, 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 you're blocking and you come back with your counter shot if you're not getting knocked backwards. So keep that in mind. You need to dig that back foot hard into the floor. You need to drop your weight a little bit, concave your body, and then just plant those hands up tight to the head. Now, the strength of this guard is just basically in the fact that we have everything a little bit tight. Everything's a little bit rigid. If I take this position and everything's loose, the first shot will just move the guard open, will widen it, and in the second shot something will land. So there's a fair amount of body tension, not massive flexing. Obviously your stomach is going to be fully flexed, and you need to have your legs slightly flexed so you don't get knocked backwards with the impact that's hitting you. But you also need some tension through your neck. Your chin draws into your neck. You need to make sure that when you're getting hit, your head doesn't lift and straighten out from the own impact of your gloves pushing against your forehead. And there needs to be some arm tension. I need to kind of pull these gloves into my head. When I'm teaching somebody in person, I basically grab their arm and I try and pull their hand away from their head when they were in this guard. If I can grab and pull, I go, no, that's no good. Somebody's going to hit you and the glove's going to bounce off or move away. What you need to do is actively tighten this to your head, almost like you're engaging your bicep and your shoulder, so that when I grab it and I try and pull it away, it's stuck there. Now, obviously, I don't want to do that the entire fight because my arms will burn out very fast. So I'm loose. Somebody starts punching and I tense up for a moment. You will notice that Holzken doesn't do a whole lot of single arm blocking. He doesn't engage and actively try to pick off shots. He just kind of holds this position because he knows that his body is protected by the forearms, which we already talked about, forearms and elbows, and his head is protected by his shoulders, by keeping his chin tucked, and by having these essentially pillows as tight to his head as he possibly can. Some of the weaknesses of this guard to keep in mind, and you will see Holzken get exposed with it occasionally, is an uppercut. From this position here, if my elbows stay nice and tight, I should be able to deal with the uppercut. But if I start going more like this, there's that opening there. And I actively have to move an arm across to block the uppercut. So keep in mind, you can't just hold this position with no movement, because eventually you will get caught. You do have to actively make small adjustments, even if it's just rotating your hips a little bit. And the one other weakness, which I notice quite often in guys, is they don't get counter shots off. They stand here, and like we said before, you want to tense your arms, but not over tense them so you can't get your counter off. So if you're going to stand like this, you need to be able to practice actively squeeze, release, and counter back. Otherwise, you are just standing here essentially like a punching bag, and the other guy will gain momentum and confidence as he comes in and bangs good shots off your guard with no reply, with no consequence for that. But Nieky is quite good at keeping nice and tight and firing back very quick with a counter shot. That's what makes this guard and his quick counters so effective to a very, very dangerous fight style. The only other downside that I can think of this guard, and Cedric Doumbé actually exposed him on it, is if you have somebody who's actively moving and they're not going to stand in front of you. If somebody's going to stand in front of you and sort of bang and exchange, this is a great guard. If you have somebody who's going to bounce and move in and out and just touch and move, and you never really get the opportunity to get those counters off, then this style of guard becomes a little bit less proficient, a little bit less likely to work. So you need to read your opponent and decide, is this guard going to be super effective, or is this guard going to have to be a little bit altered to make sure that you're still able to win the fight? If you have somebody who wants to stand and bang with you, somebody who's a big puncher, somebody who's a pressure fighter, it's perfect. If you have somebody who's evasive, who moves around a lot, somebody like Dominic Cruz, then you probably don't want this style of guard, because you will be able to stay protected, but you won't be able to actively mount a great offense. Anyway, guys, that's my breakdown of Nieky Holzken style guard. It can be used very effectively against many different style of opponents. Just keep your eye out for the guys who want to, bounce and move in and out, who are a little bit more maybe Taekwondo karate-esque. Then you might have to change the style up of your defense a little bit. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please give the video a like. If you haven't already, join the channel, get subscribed. As always, guys, train hard. I'll see you back here soon for another episode.